Hi, welcome to the sixth tutorial of the Xmgrace tutorials. Today I'll talk about how we can plot overlapping plots using Xmgrace. For example, let's say we're studying how much profit can be made for a given product on each day of the week. So you have like one profit plot, and then you want to see how many of those products, like how many units of that particular product were sold on each day of the week. And then you get a histogram or a bar plot, right? So if you want to compare these two together on one plot, so you basically plot one on top of the other. So how do you do that using Xmgrace? And I will show this using some demonstrative data. It doesn't actually mean anything, the data in itself. It's just an example to show you how you can have overlapping plots in Xmgrace. So let's take a look at the first data that we have. So this is basically a parabola. You have a number and the square of the number. So I'll be plotting each number versus the square of the number. That's it. So this will be one plot. And the other plot is the data we have from the previous tutorial, the data that we used for a histogram. So we're just going to plot this histogram on top of the parabolic curve. So how do we go about this? Since we have two different data sets, we can open up any of those data sets first. It doesn't really matter which order you choose. And once you prepare a graph for the first one, you can then import the second data set using the GUI Xmgrace. So let's first go with the data set one, just in the order V1. So here we have the parabolic curve. Okay. So what we're going to do now is let's quickly import the second data. So we can later go about how to make changes to the plot. But first, let's make sure we have two plots together. Then we'll go about aligning the plots. So data import ASCII, and just do that and click enter or return. Then select data V2. Then right click in read to graph, right click, select create new, and select G1. It has 0 sets. It shows that it's a new one. And we want to load this as block data and click OK. Since we have only one column, the X and Y data will be read only from the first column. Click accept and close here. As you can see, the first graph is of a different width as the second graph. So let's quickly go to edit, arrange graphs, and let's select the second graph and make sure the page offsets are the same. Okay, then let's just do this one more time and click accept so that we know they're both on the, at the same level. Don't worry about the axes, the overlapping axis labels. That's crazy at the moment, but we can arrange them later. Okay, so first let's go, we need to go to data, transformations, histograms, because the plot that we have here, it looks nowhere close to a histogram, right? So we need to change it into a histogram. In order to do that, make sure you select G1. By default, G0 is selected, but G1 is our histogram data. So select G1 in both source and destination. And in set, again, select the one in set, right click, select duplicate. Then you've duplicated the data, then click the G1 S1. The duplicated one is S1, while the original is S0. Select that in the destination because you're going to make changes to that. And in the set, right click here and hide it because you don't want a line plot there. Let's not try to normalize the histogram here because we've already done it in the previous tutorial, how to make a histogram using Xmgrace. So I don't think it's necessary to normalize it now. And let's start from 0 to 8 in 8 bins. If you want to know why we're starting at 0 and stopping at 8 and the number of bins is 8, please refer to tutorial 5, which is a detailed explanation of how we can make a histogram in Xmgrace. And click accept. And well, we have a histogram here. but the axes are aligned in a very crazy way. So in order to change anything here, first let's go to plot, graph appearance. Okay, let's move this here, and you see G0 is selected. Okay, let's go to plot, axis properties. Okay, so what we want to do here is to make sure that both the plots have the same x-axis. Okay, so that is something we want to make sure. We want both the plots to have the same x-axis. If they have to align on top of each other perfectly. We know that the histogram goes from 0 to 8. Okay, and let's, so here the fact that it goes from -8 to 8 is pretty inclusive, so we don't really have to change the axis here. So let that just be. And for the label string, you can just type number. Okay, because you just have a number there. So let's just, or maybe just type data value or anything, but I just leave it at number. Okay, and measure spacing, I would just give it 1. And click apply. Yeah, 1 shouldn't be too bad. And now go to Times New Roman, like this, you have to change it from Times Roman to Helvetica Bold, and change it to Helvetica Bold everywhere. Let's just quickly go about the routines that we have with the fonts, font sizes, and so on. Click apply. Okay, so this axis looks good. Okay, and now what we want to do is we want to make sure that the histogram also has the same axis. Okay, so in graph appearance, select G1, double click. Okay, when you double click, you see that these values have changed, and we know that we have selected the second graph, which is histogram. So let's go from -8 to 8, and let's change all of these settings. Sorry, we just need 150 there. Helvetica Bold, again, 150, and we don't need a label because we already have a label there, and click apply. You see now everything's perfectly aligned. As you can see, the x-axis, we're good to go with the x-axis, okay? So since we have the same range, same unit, same spacing, and everything is same, we don't actually have to display the tick labels or the tick marks, right? Because we have it already displayed from the previous graph. So we can just uncheck them if you want and click apply. You see nothing really happens because they're perfectly overlapping with each other. So you don't have to display it for this plot. You just need to do it for one, and that's good enough. Okay, so that's about the x-axis. Now let's go to y-axis. Okay, the y-axis also starts from 0 and ends at 7. But we know that it's cutting off the histogram that goes from 6 to 7, the bin. So let's change it to 14 and maybe change this to 2 and click apply. As you can see, the labels are overlapping here. So when we have two overlapping plots, what we can do is we keep the x-axis the same. We have a common x-axis, but we make sure that the y-axis corresponding to one plot is on the left side, and the y-axis corresponding to the other plot, the second plot, is on the right side. You can pick whichever one you want to represent, whether on the right side or the left side. That's totally up to you. So in this case, we have selected the histogram. So let's say we are showing the histogram counts on the right-hand side. Okay, so in order to do that, what we have to do is we have to make sure the labels and the tick marks, the tick labels and the axis label, all three of them are present on the right-hand side of the y-axis and only on the right-hand side of the y-axis and not on the left side. Okay, so let's first give a label, which is counts. They're not normalized, so let's just call them counts. And while we are at it, we can change it to Helvetica Bold. And okay, if you notice here in label properties, side, it says normal, okay? But we want them to be present on the opposite side. We want the label to be present on the opposite side, the axis label. So if you click apply, you see the counts, the axis label of counts is, it appears on the right-hand side. and not the default left-hand side. So the normal is the left-hand side for y-axis and the bottom of the x-axis, whereas opposite is the top x-axis and the right y-axis. So make sure we have this on the opposite. Now for the tick labels, we want the tick labels also on the opposite side. Click apply. And as you can see, the labels have moved to the right-hand side. Okay. And tick marks, again, you don't want them on both sides. You want them only on the opposite side. So you click OK and you see the tick marks here. And you apply your changes. See, the ticks are only on the right-hand side that correspond to this particular histogram. Okay, now let's select by double-clicking on the first plot, the parabolic curve. And as you can see, the range goes from 0 to 70, and that's totally fine. And let's make similar changes for this. But for this particular plot, the parabolic curve, we want to make sure that the axis label, the tick marks, the tick labels, all of them are present on the left side of the y-axis, which is the normal side. So for the tick marks placement, make sure the draw on option has normal side and click apply. Okay, so you see the changes being applied to the normal side. Tick labels, it's already normal. Axis label, again, it's normal, so we don't have to worry about that. And maybe just write square of the number and click accept. Apply and accept. Okay, so here you go. But one thing that bothers is, like, I mean, if you look at the plot and if you just take a closer look at the plot, you'll probably know that, you know, this is a parabolic curve and this probably represents the square of a number. So we should be reading the y-axis off of the left-hand side while we are looking at this particular parabolic curve. Whereas for the histogram, we should be reading off data from the right-hand side of the y-axis. You take a deeper look at the plot, you get this information. But in order to make it super obvious, what can we do? So one easy trick that we can use is we can color the parabolic curve and the axis label and the tick labels with one particular color. And then we can color the histogram and its corresponding y-axis labels and tick labels with another color. So that will easily indicate, okay, this color, that color. So we probably have to read off values for this histogram, you know, from the right-hand side of the y-axis. So we can color code them to make reading the data very easy off of your plot. So how do we do that? Before coloring the axis labels or the tick labels, let's just go to plot, set appearance. Okay. So we are on the parabolic curve right now. That's what is selected. So let's just have a red curve. Okay. Change it to red, click apply. There you go. You've color coded the curve to be red. Now, let's double click here in graph appearance on the histogram plot. And in the set appearance, you see the one that's selected has a minus symbol, which means it's hidden, the initial line plot that we had. So make sure you click, you do a normal click on the G1.S1, which is the histogram that you see. And you have the left stairs, that's the default, that's okay. You go to line and type to baseline color blue. There you go. So you have colored the histogram blue. And also make sure near the baseline, click draw line. You see the difference with and without draw line. So if I uncheck draw line, the border is gone. The histogram basically dominates your x-axis frame, and the histogram itself does not have a frame. It does not have a baseline frame. So if you select or check the draw line option and apply, you see that it doesn't basically overlap the x-axis frame. And even if it does, the draw line basically puts it back in place. So make sure you check the draw line option and click accept. So one thing that looks pretty weird is the histogram is basically masking your parabolic curve, right? So one way to get rid of that is in graph appearance, just select the G0, which is your parabolic curve, right click and select duplicate. Okay, as you can see, G2 is the duplicate of G0. So you can select G0, right click and just kill it. Click OK. That's okay. You don't need G0. You don't want two sets of one particular graph, right? So now in this order, so the order here you see G0, G1, G2 is what goes to the backmost of the part and then what of your plot and what is on the frontmost side of your plot. So now G2 is on the frontmost side and G2 is a duplicate of G0, which is how you bring this plot to the front. Okay, it's just a small trick to make sure this is on top of your histogram. And you don't have to do this if you really wanted the histogram to be on top of the parabolic curve. So that was just a choice you had to make. Okay, now to color coding the y-axis labels and so on, go to plot axes properties. Okay, now we are in y-axis. Yes. Let's go to G1, double click. So G1 is your histogram. Okay, so the histogram is selected and we want to color code the axis to be blue. So the tick labels, we want them to be in blue. So change the color to blue and click apply. As you can see, the labels changed colors. Now axis label, in label properties, go to color, change from black to blue and click apply. This changes your axes and tick label colors to blue and you can easily identify. You have to read values off of this for the histogram. Then double click on your parabolic curve, the G2 dataset here in graph appearance. And here you change the color to red. And in main, tick label properties, change the color to red and click apply and click accept. So this is how you change the colors and you color code your data. It makes it super easy to read the data off of your plot. And I think the last thing that we have to do here is make sure that there are no white spaces in the plot. So let's just select the histogram first and then maybe okay, let's just select the parabolic curve first and change the values there because the label on the left-hand side of the y-axis corresponds to that of the parabolic curve. Okay, so maybe 0.11 should be fine. But you see, like this is not aligned, so go back here and make this 0.11 so that aligns it. Okay, now that we are here, let's change the X max value. $1.2 is a little too much. 1.15, maybe 1.18, maybe 1.19. Okay, 1.195. Make sure you have the same thing, 1.195 for the other plot too, so that it's aligned well. And here again, the Y minimum can be changed to maybe 0.1. .094 maybe. And make the same changes to the other plot too. Like we've seen how to deal with the viewport values in the previous tutorial to eliminate the white spaces. For the Y max 3.9. Okay, 1 is a little too much, so 0.97. I guess we can push it a little more, maybe 0.98. Yep. 0.98 seems to do the trick. So let's not push it beyond 0.98. So by controlling the values in the viewport, you can basically eliminate the white spaces like this. And here you have the overlapping plots in Xmgrace. So it's not difficult at all. To summarize quickly, you first open Xmgrace by plotting one particular data set, and then you import the other data set using the data import ASCII options. And then if you have to transform it into a histogram or something else, you do your transformation. But before that, make sure the arranged graphs has the same page offsets for both of the graphs. Then you go ahead for the transformations, and then you make sure they both have the same x-axis, followed by, like taking a decision of which y-axis should be aligned to which plot, which side of the y-axis should be aligned to which plot. And then it's up to you if you want to color code them or make any other changes. So yes, this is how you get overlapping plots using Xmgrace. And finally, let's save our work before we close it. Let's call it overlapping graphs.agr. Click OK. And if you want to, I'm sure we want to save it as a PDF, go to custom, accept, print. Perfect. So as you can see, here we have the overlapping graphs.agr or PDF. So if I have to open the overlapping graphs or PDF, there you go. This is what I get. Okay, so here we have the PDF, and yep, we're all set. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you find this very helpful. And if you have any questions about this tutorial or in general about any other tutorial, please let me know.